Pollen is bad. My black car looks green right now. Question as phrased again by the committee is as follows. The evidence regarding global warming is irrefutable. The Bush administration has virtually ignored the problem and has refused to sign the Kyoto Protocol. What policies would you support to prevent global warming?
You know, I was out in South Bristol just yesterday. We were out campaigning. You know, I started knocking on doors back in 1990 when I was running for the state senate. And I knocked on the doors of 5,000 people when I ran for the state senate. And that's the reason I got elected, right? Because we're out working harder than the next guy. And I was up in South Bristol yesterday, and we were at the Fisherman's Co-op. And I was standing there talking to a guy who's actually a mechanical engineer. And he said, you know something? He said, do you have any idea that the Earth's temperature has actually cooled 7 degrees over the last year? 7 degrees? That's amazing. You know, you got poor old Al Gore around having a heart attack, right? Worrying about global warming, but he's selling books and selling movies, right? And, you know, it's irrefutable. It's irrefutable. Global warming is not happening. It's not happening. I think, listen, when my wife was calling me and emailing me when I was in Iraq this past winter, and you saw the snow and you saw the cold, it's obvious. And in fact, in Iraq, this past winter, it actually snowed one day when I was in Iraq. So global warming is a fallacy. Do we need to be good stewards of the environment? Do we need to do everything we can to reduce pollution? Absolutely. I think we do. But we can't get caught up in a what if, and a who what, and what, and hypothetical. The fact of the matter is, it's not happening. Thank you.
One of my favorite stories, I joined the Democrats in all their debates while Charlie was away. I became like the team the Globetrotters always used to play. And we went up to Standish, and you know, they had a tough winter. I mean, there was snow up to the windows, and Ethan Strimling gets up on the stage, and Ethan's a Juilliard School of Acting actor, very accomplished. And he says, out loud, he says, the globe is melting. There's snow coming over the windows. And there's collective laughter, you know, in the room. The thing that worries me about this element of global warming is the censorship component, right? That we can no longer even dissent or object to the science of it. And that creates an interesting political dilemma, because I've already seen it. And how do you handle it in front of folks who, geez, you're crazy if you don't believe that global warming doesn't exist. So how do you defend that? The reality is, I can show you two, you know, bioscientists down at MIT that'll tell you the globe's not warming. This conversation should be reserved to the scientific community and not to the political community in Washington, D.C. Nor, as Republicans, should we start caving to it. Once again, we should speak boldly about it and take bold principles about it. They want to use, I stood with these folks last week again. They don't want to drill in Anwar. They don't want to drill here in this country. They don't want nuclear power. And nuclear power is actually the cleanest option we have. And just recently, the former president, I guess it is, of Greenpeace said nuclear power is the way to go. That's the strength. That's how radical these folks are when it comes to the science or unscience of global warming. It's become a measure of censorship. I've stood up and said it consistently. It doesn't exist. The scientific community tells me it doesn't exist. Even if it were to exist, the way to resolve these problems and the nexus here between the environmentalist folks and the people who want to get off foreign oil is the free market. And Al Gore actually is the poster child for this, because he's now in California as a venture capitalist providing money to companies who are looking for the next energy independent solution. So that's one place where we can agree on it, which is, I don't mind what you say about it, but let's agree that we can't afford to send a man to the moon. We can't afford any more corn ethanol subsidies. The market for energy independence, in other words, replacing the combustion engine, is a $3 trillion potential market. That is getting the interest of entrepreneurs across the world. And you know what? They're ending up in California. I'd like to see us have some of those jobs here in Maine. So I will defend the science or the unscience of it. I will not fall victim to the censorship component of it, but I will point to the free market, that if there's a way we can get off foreign oil and it makes both of us happy, then let's do that. But in the meantime, let's not let California profit from another .com. Let's get some of those jobs here in Maine. Thank you.
Again, phrased by the committee, to represent how the opposition might ask. Given the out-of-control spending by the Bush administration and the current dismal state of our economy, why should Maine voters elect any Republican to Congress?
Got to use a quick, this is one of the reasons I'm running. When you look at the Republicans, they behave just as badly when it comes to spending as the Democrats. In fact, Bernie Goldberg says it best in his joke. He says there's an old prairie when he's talking about the sentiment in Washington, D.C., and everybody's sort of lackluster feeling about career politicians and Republicans and Democrats. Talks about an old prairie preacher. An old man dies, he's in front of the church. He said, can anybody say something nice about this man? Nobody raises their hand. Asks again, can anybody say something nice about this man? Nobody raises their hand. Please, can somebody say something nice about him? Finally, somebody in the back of the room says, hey, his brother was worse. And I think that's how we feel about both Democrats and Republicans when it comes to spending. If you look at the pork barrel spending last year, $17 billion in pork barrel spending. $534 million here in Maine alone. Hillary Clinton asked for $2.3 billion in New York, including a museum to Woodstock in upstate New York. So when it comes to these problems about the economy, I would agree. George Bush has spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money as a percentage of the budget. But if you look at the trend since the late 1960s, when LBJ passed this Great Society, that's when the problem started. And as I've said before, and I know I sound like a broken record, there's three big components to the spending problem. You can talk about discretionary spending all day, but the ones that are going to drive us bankrupt sooner rather than later are Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. I've got very detailed plans on how to resolve this, because if we don't, by 2017, Social Security taxes go up 50% every day, or every year, and every year after that. And then in 2040, when my daughter is entering her prime income earning years, every tax dollar she sends to Washington, D.C. will only go to pay the interest on the debt. That's a sin. More so, the guy who's talking about this is the former Comptroller General of this country. His name's David Walker. And he quit his job as the former Comptroller General to go around the country and raise awareness about this $34 trillion problem we have. I would direct you to my website because I've got the video clip on it there. And he's saying politicians want to stay away from it. Because he likes to think like de Tocqueville did, which was the end of the American Republic is in sight when the United States Congress realizes it can bribe the American people with their own money. And when I listen to Ethan and Shelley, they're making promises that nobody can cash. Shelley had a great quote last week. I'm sick and tired of everybody asking me how I'm going to pay for this health care plan. So when you hear people talk about increasing, whether it's S-chip or health insurance, that is just going to be an expansion of Medicare or Medicaid. And I know I came out against S-chip when it was tough. Right now in the state of Maine, you can qualify for social services or our version of Maine Care up to 3 times the federal poverty limit. It's time we get back to the hard work and reject the preachings of the social welfare state that has helped craft this economy here in Maine. And the final thing I like to say, and I say it all the time, is there's a model how to get out of this slump, especially for the state of Maine. Ireland used to be at the bottom of the EU, right? And they used to export potatoes and young people. What does Maine export? Potatoes. Yeah, very good. And how did they get to where they are today? They've got some of the lowest corporate tax rates in the world. That's how you do it. So Dean Scontras is going, and quite frankly, this candidacy was born out of the idea that I'm sick of that kind of spending. I can't stomach the idea that my little daughter Zoe, when she's 40 years old, is going to be sending all her tax money just to pay the interest on the debt. Thank you.